Right now, four countries are quietly ripping up 75 years of military strategy and rebuilding from scratch. Japan is abandoning pacifism. Germany is throwing billions at its military after decades of barely funding it. Poland is constructing the largest army in Europe. Australia is acquiring nuclear-powered submarines for the first time ever. Four nations, four different continents, all making the same calculation at exactly the same moment. That's not coincidence, that's preparation. So what do these countries see coming that the rest of us are missing? And why are they suddenly acting like time is running out? Let's start with Japan, because honestly, their transformation is absolutely wild. This is a country that wrote pacifism into their constitution after World War II. Article 9 literally forbade maintaining a military for offensive purposes. For 3 generations, that was the deal. Japan focused on economic power. America handled their defense. Everyone was cool with it. Except now Japan is saying forget all that. They just announced they're doubling their defense budget to 2% of GDP. That might not sound crazy until you realize Japan has the third largest economy on Earth. We're talking about adding $65 billion annually to military spending. That's more than most countries spend on their entire military total. But here's where it gets insane. Money is just the start. Japan is buying Tomahawk cruise missiles that can strike targets over 1,000 miles away. They're developing hypersonic weapons. They're converting helicopter carriers into actual aircraft carriers that can launch F-35 stealth fighters. Look, Japan already had one of the most advanced militaries in Asia, but it was purely defensive. Now they're building offensive capability that would make them a top-tier military power overnight. And they're not subtle about the target. Every Japanese defense document mentions China constantly. The message is clear. If conflict breaks out over Taiwan, Japan isn't sitting on the sidelines. They're going to be in the fight from minute one. Now shift to Germany, where the transformation is equally dramatic. Remember the Germany that spent decades being super uncomfortable with military power because of history? That Germany is gone. In February 2022, Chancellor Scholz announced what he called a Zeitenwende, a turning point. Germany created a €100 billion special fund just for military modernization. Not over decades, right now. The German military had become kind of a joke in NATO. Pilots couldn't fly enough because aircraft were grounded. Soldiers trained with broomsticks instead of machine guns because they lacked equipment. Germany spent barely 1% of GDP on defense, while expecting everyone else to carry the weight. Suddenly, that's all changing. Germany is planning to have the largest conventional military in Europe within a decade. They're ordering F-35s, upgrading tanks, investing heavily in air defense, and here's the kicker. They're discussing bringing back conscription. Real talk, mandatory military service would have been political suicide a few years ago. Now it's on the table. And most Germans are actually okay with it. Why? Because Russia invaded Ukraine and shattered every assumption Europeans had about permanent peace. Germany shares a continent with Russia. They're watching Ukraine and doing the math. If Putin will launch a full-scale invasion of a country with 40 million people, what makes anyone think he'll stop there? Germany decided they're not going to find out the hard way. Then there's Poland. And honestly, Poland's buildup is low-key the most aggressive of all. While others are planning, Poland is straight up buying everything. They've ordered almost 1,000 South Korean K-2 tanks, hundreds of artillery systems, F-35s, Apache helicopters, HIMARS rockets, Patriot missiles, you name it. By 2030, Poland will have the largest and most modern land army in Europe, bigger than Germany, France, or the UK. They're increasing active troops to 300,000. They're spending 4% of GDP on defense, literally double the NATO requirement. No other major economy spends that much as a percentage. But here's what makes Poland different. They're not preparing for hypothetical future conflict. They believe war is coming soon. Poland shares borders with Russia through Kaliningrad and Belarus. They watched Russia invade Georgia in 2008. They watched Crimea fall in 2014. They watched the full Ukraine invasion in 2022. Polish planners assume that sometime in the next decade, they'll face Russian forces directly. So they're not building a military to deter conflict. They're building one designed to win a high-intensity war against a near-peer adversary. That's fundamentally different. And then Australia. literally on the other side of the planet, making equally dramatic moves. Australia always had a capable military, but sized for regional operations. That approach is being abandoned. Australia canceled a $65 billion submarine program with France, took the diplomatic hit, and joined a new security pact with the US and UK called AUKUS. Through AUKUS, Australia is acquiring nuclear-powered attack submarines, making them only the 7th country to operate nuclear subs. These aren't nuclear-armed, but nuclear-powered subs can stay underwater almost indefinitely, travel faster, dive deeper, and operate much farther from home. Australia is also acquiring long-range strike missiles and expanding northern bases. Why does this matter? Because Australia sits on the edge of the Indo-Pacific, where US-China tensions are highest. Australia's economy is deeply integrated with China, their largest trading partner. But they're also a treaty ally of America. For decades, Australia balanced these relationships, trading with China, while aligning with America security-wise. That balancing act is over. Australia chose the American alliance. By building these capabilities, they're signaling willingness to participate in high-end operations, potentially thousands of miles from home. Operations to defend Taiwan, keep sea lanes open in the South China Sea, counter Chinese influence in the Pacific. This is massive. So what connects all this? What explains why Japan, Germany, Poland, and Australia are restructuring militaries at exactly the same time? It's not just Russia, though Ukraine was definitely a catalyst for Europeans. It's not just China, though Chinese expansion drives calculations in Tokyo and Canberra. The real answer is all 4 countries looked at the global situation and reached the same conclusion. The old order is collapsing, and they can't count on someone else to protect them anymore. For 75 years, global security was simple. America provided a security umbrella for allies. American military might was so overwhelming that most allies didn't need large militaries. They could free ride on American protection while spending on social programs and economic development. That system worked well, but it required American willingness to maintain that role, required adversaries believing America would actually fight for allies, and required America having such dominant superiority that deterrence was credible. All 3 are now in question. American commitment to defending allies has become genuinely uncertain. The Trump administration raised serious questions about honoring NATO commitments. Biden restored traditional alliances, but American politics are volatile enough that allies know they can't take long-term commitment for granted. Beyond politics, there's simple reality that America is stretched thin, simultaneously trying to deter Russia in Europe, counter China in the Pacific, maintain Middle East presence, and handle challenges everywhere else. Even for the most powerful military in history, that's a lot. American superiority, while still substantial, is eroding. China has modernized its military at breakneck speed for 2 decades. The technology gap that made American dominance unquestionable has narrowed considerably. So these 4 countries are making a rational calculation. They can't assume America will always be there, or that American power alone will deter adversaries. They need to defend themselves and contribute meaningfully to their own security. This isn't abandoning alliances. It's evolving them into something more balanced, where allies bring real capability. But here's where things get scary. When multiple countries dramatically expand militaries simultaneously, it creates what scholars call a security dilemma. Each country is acting defensively from their perspective, but adversaries don't see it that way. China looks at Japan acquiring strike weapons and sees threat. Russia looks at Poland building Europe's biggest army and sees NATO aggression. This can create self-fulfilling prophecies, where preparations for potential conflict actually make that conflict more likely. What does this mean for the rest of us? If you're in any of these countries, your government has basically said they think major conflict is likely enough that it's worth fundamentally reordering national priorities. That's not comforting, but it's reality. The biggest question is whether these preparations make war more or less likely. The optimistic view says strong defenses deter aggression. The pessimistic view says arms races create instability. History supports both views, which honestly isn't reassuring. What we're witnessing is the most significant restructuring of global military power since the Cold War ended. 4 major economies, all democracies, all American allies, simultaneously deciding the world has become dangerous enough to prioritize military power in ways they haven't in generations. They're not buying more of the same equipment. They're fundamentally changing from defensive to offensive capable, from relying on allies to fighting independently, from preparing for minor conflicts to readying for major wars. These countries are reading the global situation and preparing for something they hope never comes, but believe might be inevitable. That shift tells you everything about where the world is headed. The question isn't whether they're right to prepare, it's what happens when the thing they're preparing for actually arrives.